Greetings everyone, I am Rafael Tasso and welcome to Aim to Thrive, Wellbeing Education for the Construction Industry, where we learn life skills to move from a surviving to thriving mindset, health, safety and wellbeing empowerment through education. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Suzi Wallis, who is a family therapist and registered counsellor with the New Zealand Association of Counsellors. Suzi will share her insights into the benefits of reaching out for help when people find their personal, family, and professional life spiraling out of control. Suzi, welcome to Aim to Thrive.
Kia ora. Great to be here.
Awesome. Suzi, please share a little bit about yourself and your day-to-day life as a professional counsellor and therapist.
I trained as a counsellor and family therapist, which has a very systemic view of how people work. They're not just individuals working in a silo on their own. They are part of a system, whether it be family, religion, work, sports, activities, whatever their kind of tribe is, they're part of that, and that system has effects on them. So when a person comes to see me individually, it's not just about them, it's about what's influencing them, what's pressuring them, whether they have the support that they need, how to upskill them with being able to communicate firstly what they need, but also how they're feeling. Some people have grown up in families where that's not taught, or it's not okay, it's not safe. So sometimes the initial work is about finding language, and if they can't find it in language, sometimes we start with the body and how they feel it in their body, and then they can work out how to articulate what's going on for them. So I see couples, I see families, adult families, or from age 14 up. I work with lots of individuals. I see people who come through employee assistance programs, which thank goodness lots of companies in this country have, and people who self-refer as well. Occasionally I get people sent by family members, and that's always interesting, particularly if they don't come with them, so they only hear, or I only hear, one perspective. So it's a real varied day. I work full-time in private practice in Ellerslie in Auckland, and I just have to work with what comes in the door. It's a really rewarding job.
Yeah, tremendous. Suzi, one of the biggest challenges which we face in the construction industry is that there's a lot of poor mental health, there's a lot of depression with workers, and one of the biggest challenges is that mostly men, in this instance, they just don't reach out for help. So for a lot of them, they have all these very large life challenges, they're spiraling down. And I understand only 7 out of 100 guys actually reach out for professional help. What are your thoughts towards that? And why do you think there's such a barrier for workers, and especially men, to reach out for help?
I think our gender stereotypes are really rigid and really unhelpful. I mean, if you look at our history, people were sent from the other side of the world on a boat for months, got off at the other end in a land they weren't familiar with animals and plants and things they knew nothing about, and they didn't have the luxury. They were surviving. They didn't have the luxury of feeling and being able to express their feelings. They were literally in survival mode. They had to work out how to build a life in a country they'd never been to before. And then you get people coming in from overseas, from other cultures, and there hasn't been a great way. I mean, it is getting better for sure, but for many generations, there hasn't been good systems in place for people to integrate and still hold on to the things that are really important to them about their own cultures. Then when we look at Australian and New Zealand masculine stereotypes, there's a lot of suck it up, be tough, physical strength being tied in with emotional strength, and they're completely different things. You can be very strong emotionally and be struggling physically, or the other way around. And so there's that real fixed idea of you're one package, you're this tough guy, and get on with it. You don't get to have feelings. And there's lots of teasing and bullying that goes on if you do express them. And it has this cumulative effect where people get shamed for speaking out, so they shut down. And where does that go? It goes inside into a really festering, scary place for some people.
Yeah, sure thing. Suzi, how can we as family, colleagues, work colleagues, friends, how can we best support our friends and loved ones in need? Like, and has this help changed over time? Has the attitude to this help changed over time, do you feel?
I think I'm trying to remember when the "hi, how are you" thing turned up. When I was a kid, that wasn't really there. I think it came in with maybe American television. When I was a kid, when you asked someone how they were, you were actually asking. And now we have this very common habit of saying, "Hi, how are you? Fine, thanks, how are you?" That's not a greeting. It's not a genuine, authentic greeting. So I think it's really important to slow down and ask people actually how they are, and stop and wait for a response, and ask meaningful questions. Like, if you've been in touch with someone and you know something's coming up that they're anxious about, or there's a pressure on, refer to it specifically so that they don't have to dredge that information up for themselves and feel more vulnerable. I think regular contact is really important, whether that's in person or electronically. In person is always better, in my view, because you can really get a sense of how someone's doing, what they might be feeling vulnerable to really show you. Of course, talking about personal stuff for us encourages people to do the same, as long as we're not getting into that kind of, "Oh, you think you've had a bad day, well, mine's been worse" kind of dynamic, which does happen.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for someone changing their behavior around drug or alcohol use, or sleep, or appetite, withdrawing from contact that used to bring them pleasure. I mean, we've just come out of a pandemic where there's been a lot less ability to connect with people in person, and some people have got out of the habit, and it's quite anxiety producing to get back out there and put themselves at risk in the way that you can go out and hear some horrible stuff, or you can find someone mean, or you can lose a game if that's what you're out there to do. So supporting people gently to get out there in the world and connect with people is a really powerful thing. I mean, there's a lot of research now about addiction being a disconnection issue. It's not necessarily about brain or even learned behaviors, although that's part of it, but it creates a void when we have disconnection, and we are beings that need to fill that void.
Yeah, sure thing. So disconnection, Suzi, that's a really interesting point. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, about what it means to be disconnected?
Well, we are social animals. We are made to live in tribes. And, back in village life, we would help each other out with extra chores. Someone needed to build a fence, you all helped out. Someone needed to childcare, you all helped out. Someone was sick, you all helped out. And so when we don't have that ability to ask, or we don't have a small network, it's only 3 or 4 people really that we need to be able to turn to. Like, if number 1 isn't available, we can go to 2 or 3. Then we lose our ability to recognize who we are, and we lose our worth in the world, because our worth is both internal and external. It's reflected in the connections that we have. So when we don't have 3 or 4 people who we can depend on and trust, it does feel like we're really, really alone. And although alone and lonely are different, when they're interlinked, or when loneliness is the major factor for someone, it's very difficult to keep hope. Hope and connection are connected.
Yeah. Great. Suzi, from, when I look at the help that's available for people with challenges, there appears to be a lot of help, but really, how does someone go about finding the right help for themselves? Like, what are the best steps to take to get yourself to ensure that you're on the right track for the right type of help?
There is a lot of help, and if you Google mental health help, the first page that came up for me was the Mental Health Foundation, which has a lot of links. Organisations who have a good HR department and have an EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, will have flyers and things around the place which are accessible for staff. And that's usually 3 funded sessions with a counsellor, and it's completely confidential, and people can talk about anything that's going on, work, personal, whatever it is. That's very common in New Zealand organisations now. but there's also lots of helplines. There's the depression helpline, Lifeline, Need to Talk, which is kind of Mental Health Foundation initiative, Samaritan, Suicide Crisis Helpline. And then there's a lot of apps and online options as well now. So some of the ones I found when I was looking are Auntie D, Beating the Blues, Calm Keeper, Changing Minds, Clear Head, Ever Yellow, Just a Thought, Mood Gym, Mood Panda, Mood Scope, Small Steps. So, I mean, that's not all of them. That's just some that I found in my research. Some of those are apps that give you ideas and remind you of self-care and things that will help you maintain resilience. And others are interactive, where people respond to you. So if it feels a bit scary to go and sit in front of a person, and we try not to make it too scary, then there are lots of options for other ways of connecting as well. Text, you can text some of them, you can message some of them, or call.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess a person's journey is to sort of to try a few of these options and see which one fits within the best. Would that be your recommendation?
Yeah, it's so important that the fit is right and that you feel comfortable with the service that you're using. And it's not always going to be the first one, it might be the fifth one. And you know, specifically with counselling, people forget that they are the client and they can choose the person that they feel most comfortable with. So if they are choosing the face-to-face option, if the first person doesn't fit, that's okay. It's about the right chemistry. And so they can try again. It's not a reflection of them.
Yeah, thanks.
Same with any services that are out there for help, like doctors.
Yeah, sure thing.
Same
I guess the key is not to give up. Would you agree with that?
Really important not to give up. There are, and people who are really depressed forget that there are a lot of people who care about them. Sometimes it becomes a one-way connection. So people are trying to pour love into them and it's not being experienced that way. So having people around who are regularly checking in and reminding them of that and not waiting to be contacted by the person who's struggling is really important. Some people say, well, they didn't contact me, so I didn't know they weren't okay. Well, people who aren't okay often are way too anxious to reach out. Sure. So that's another thing to bear in mind for family and friends is to keep persevering, keep sending that message that the person's important and that they want them in their lives and that they want to help and they're available for that. I mean, sometimes it could just be a walk or a chat somewhere or playing a game with them. It doesn't have to be deep and meaningful conversation. But letting the person know that they're important and they want them as part of their lives is really important.
Yeah. Suzi, what are the common misconceptions of counsellors and family therapists? What's the main role of these professionals in helping people in need, and what are the common misconceptions that may not be accurate?
I think some of the big ones are that we're here to dredge through all the hard stuff that's happened in your life and re-traumatize you. That's definitely not our jobs. Our jobs are to help you upskill if you need around some things that might not be going well in your life, but to work with what you're willing and ready to work with to get better results or to achieve more happiness or more resilience. We don't tell people what to do. We make suggestions sometimes, but it's up to them to decide if that feels right for them. I mean, the only time we really intervene directly is if there's a safety issue, if someone's at risk or someone else that they know is at risk. Otherwise, with adults, it's a collaborative process of working out what's happening in their lives, what isn't working for them, and working with them to improve the results through self-awareness and through changing the way they approach things, including how they talk to themselves, to get better outcomes, to help them make the best decisions rather than make them for them. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a put your whole experience out on a plate and have it dissected. Yeah. Especially with short-term counselling. Sometimes with long-term psychotherapy, for example, that is the goal. But you know, the client is the client and it's client-led.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, that's really good to know. Suzi, you must have a lot of very full-on conversations and sometimes I'm sure you must come out of a conversation or counselling where you feel the heaviness of the people that you're speaking to. So what are your daily habits, and what do you do for yourself to keep yourself mentally and physically well?
I meditate every day that I'm seeing clients, and that's not a formal, I mean, it depends what you mean by meditation. Some people find exercise meditative. I discovered early on when I was trying this that if I close my eyes, my brain gets way too busy and I get distracted and I can't stay on task. So I leave my eyes open and I watch a candle flame and I plug into some nature sounds and just let thoughts and feelings come and pass by me, or if I need to engage with them, I'll briefly do that and then let them go. And it's a practice of observing my thoughts rather than getting tied into them. And that's 20 minutes worth each morning. Then I usually exercise and do some resistance training. And I'm obsessed with drinking water, so I keep myself well hydrated. I also attend a dance class once a week, so that's a social aspect as well. As a practicing counsellor, I have to see a supervisor once a fortnight because I'm full-time, and that's talking to someone about challenges that I'm having either professionally or personally that can impact on my work, and brainstorming and getting ideas about how to do things better. So that's, supervisors are amazing in our work. I also watch my consumption of media, because media is very alarmist, largely negative, lots of clickbait, which is getting worse, it seems, with time. And I limit my exposure to that, because you can really go down rabbit holes and get into some dark places if you follow the thread that they're trying to encourage you to often. So I follow pages that are uplifting and motivating far more than the alarmist ones. And I watch my alcohol consumption. I rarely drink because it's a depressant and doesn't really do a lot for me anyway. And, you know, try to lead a pretty good life.
Yeah, great.
I have a great relationship, which helps. I have someone at home who is supportive and understanding and kind. And if I didn't have that, I'd utilize friends for that purpose, because we do need people to just not debrief with detail, obviously, because it's confidential, but just that breathe out ability and closeness and affection for me is important for me. And just chatting about life and how you're doing can really help settle me at the end of the day.
Yeah, fantastic. Suzi, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that you've shared your insights, and I'll make sure that there's a link below our video where people can get in touch with you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Suzi.
Okay.
Great.